A man walks down a quiet New Orleans street. He passes St. Louis Cathedral, turns into an alley and hears something behind him. He spins around. The last thing he sees is the barrel of a blunderbuss. Glass shatters, smoke fills the air, and just like that, the most powerful crime boss in America lies dead. 2 pieces of shrapnel buried in his skull. This murder would set off a chain of events, leading to the largest mass lynching in American history. To a police chief gunned down in the street, to secrets whispered with dying breath. But to understand any of that, we need to go back. Back to the man who started it all. The man historians call the first American Mafia boss, and the ruthless rival who put him in the ground. This is the story no one tells you about the birth of organized crime in America. New Orleans, 1862. The city has just fallen to Union forces. Confederate flags come down. Military boots march through muddy streets. And in the chaos, one man sees opportunity. His name was Raffaele Agnello. Born in Palermo around 1829, Agnello had arrived in New Orleans before the war, with nothing but ambition and a willingness to do whatever it took to get ahead. Within the growing Sicilian community, he ran the classics: protection rackets, gambling, numbers games, small-time stuff, preying on his own people. But the war was his golden ticket. When Union forces took control, they needed help maintaining order. Local watch groups formed across the city. One of them was called the European Brigade. Guess who took charge? Agnello used that badge like a skeleton key. Suddenly, his protection rackets weren't just in Sicilian neighborhoods. They spread across the entire city. His gambling operations multiplied. His influence exploded. By the time the war ended, Raffaele Agnello had transformed himself from a street-level hustler into something far more dangerous. He controlled the French Quarter, known then as Little Palermo. He controlled the docks, where Sicilian laborers worked for pennies while he collected fortunes. To some, he was a hero, a man who made it. But here's what they didn't see. Agnello built his empire on the backs of his own countrymen. The same people he claimed to protect were the ones he exploited most. And not everyone was willing to bow. Say, when we picture Sicilian immigrants, we imagine a united people, one culture, one loyalty. That's a lie. In 19th century Sicily, the Mafia was mostly an Eastern phenomenon, centered in Palermo. People from Messina, on the other side of the island, they'd never lived under Mafia rule, and they had no intention of starting now just because they'd crossed an ocean. This is where our second player enters, Joseph Macheca. Unlike Agnello, Macheca was born on American soil in 1843. His biological father disappeared into prison when he was young. His mother remarried a Maltese fruit importer, and Joseph grew up learning the business, running his stepfather's fruit store, making connections, building relationships. Important relationships. Relationships with a family called the Matrangas. Remember that name. During the Civil War, Macheca fought for the Confederacy. When he returned home to find New Orleans under federal occupation, he didn't sulk, he adapted. He started smuggling weapons and supplies to support the Confederate cause, right under Union noses. After the war, Democratic clubs sprang up across the city, forming what locals called the Ring. Officially, they were political fraternal organizations. Unofficially, they were white supremacist militias. Macheca didn't just join, he led. His group was called the Innocenti, made up of Sicilian immigrants, European newcomers, and American-born whites. They patrolled streets, they supplemented police. And here's where it gets interesting. They were assigned to patrol the French Quarter, Agnello's territory. And Macheca filled his ranks with Messinese Sicilians, men who hated Agnello, men who had old scores to settle. Suddenly the people in Little Palermo had new protectors, and they stopped paying Agnello's protection money. The message was clear, a new power was rising. One evening in 1868, after an Innocenti meeting, the members headed home through the quarter. A prominent Messinese named Lucero Barbara walked alone. He never made it home. Someone ambushed him in the dark, left him dead in the street. Every finger in the city pointed at one man, Raffaele Agnello. Agnello's brother Giuseppe, called Peppino, tried to smooth things over. He approached Messinese community leaders, pleading innocence. As a gesture of goodwill, the Agnellos threw a party. Invited everyone, let's break bread, they said. Let's put this behind us. It started as a party. It didn't end as one. Barbara's replacement, a man named Giuseppe Bonanno, cornered one of Agnello's men. started asking questions about the murder. We don't know what was said. We know how it ended. A gunshot point blank. One of Agnello's men shot through the face. Then chaos guns drawn. Shots fired from every direction. When the smoke cleared, Bonanno had a bullet in his back fired by Raffaele Agnello himself. From that moment it was war. Macheca threw his full support behind the Messinese faction. Guns, ammunition, resources. But even with his help, they couldn't hold the French market. They lost ground. Some fled the city entirely, including Bonanno, barely alive. He didn't stay gone for long. Bonanno crept back into New Orleans, trying to blend in, lay low. But Agnello had eyes everywhere. He sent a hit squad led by his brother Peppino to finish the job. They kicked down Bonanno's door, opened fire with lupare, sawed off double-barrel shotguns that could cut a man in half. Bonanno survived again. A grocery worker wasn't so lucky, caught a bullet through the neck. By now the streets were soaked in blood, bodies on both sides, no end in sight, until Macheca made his move. A message arrived for Raffaele Agnello from Joseph Macheca at a truce. After months of hiding, hitting the mattresses, as they'd say decades later, Agnello emerged. He walked through the quarter with his chest out. The war was over. He'd won. He strolled past St. Louis Cathedral, turned into a side street, probably heading to Macheca's fruit store to finalize terms. Then he heard something. He turned and stared down the barrel of a blunderbuss. The blast shattered windows. Smoke swallowed the alley. And Raffaele Agnello, the first American Mafia boss, collapsed with 2 pieces of shrapnel embedded in his skull. Right there, in full view of Joseph Macheca's store. Some call this the first Mafia war. It wasn't. Not really. This was a battle between 2 Sicilian factions. One criminal organization. One group of countrymen refusing to be victimized. The Messinese weren't running rackets. They were fighting for survival. But what came next? What came next was a real Mafia war. With Agnello dead, the power structure of New Orleans' underworld shattered. New players emerged, new alliances formed, new blood feuds began. And standing at the center of it all, Joseph Macheca, a man with connections to a family called the Matrangas, a man whose ambitions reached far beyond the French Quarter. In the years to come, these ambitions would lead to something unthinkable. A police chief murdered in the street, whispering secrets with his final breath. A city demanding vengeance, and the largest mass lynching in American history. That story is coming. But for now, just remember this. Every empire is built on blood, and in New Orleans, the blood was only starting to flow.